time when I'm in the arena, cause I'm beating everybody like when I beat Tina. I can throw down with the campus mentality. The gloves wouldn't stop still your whole camp's reality. Sticky bombs flying all over the place. If I find your body, you know I'm humping your face. Duck walking with my heavy machine gun. The words on your screen, you were killed by Z1.
How's it going, guys, and welcome back to another build video. And in this one we are going to be taking a look at my Jakob slash sort of just crit Moze. Now, to get the big question out of the way of why this isn't Minesweeper builds tend to just be Minesweeper focused. I wanted an actual crit Moze where Moze is existing to deal crit damage instead of existing to get Minesweeper chains, and I'm quite happy with how this did end up turning out. So with that being said, let's get on into things. So we'll go over Stoll Trees first, as there's not much to talk about here. It is mostly pretty damn standard, especially this blue tree. We have Fire in the Stag Den, shit ton of incendiary damage. Stainless Steel Bear is really the only thing I feel like I super need to talk about here, as Stainless Steel Bear for some reason does boost the damage of Fire in the Stag Den, so this is definitely worth noting. The other thing is I don't take a point in Auto Bear. This is personal preference. This is however you want to have your playstyle be. If you prefer to use Auto Bear, you can take a point out of Vampire. You don't really need 3 out of 5 in here. You can instead put it into Auto Bear. The reason I don't use Auto Bear is that I tend to prefer just jumping into Iron Bear as a sort of oh fuck button, and then using the Rocket Pod to kill off Iron Bear so that I can put him onto a full cooldown so that I get big surplus for as long as possible. Because since we aren't using the Rocketeer here, this is the easiest way of getting Iron Bear onto a full cooldown to maximize big surplus uptime. But of course, if you would rather be using ASEs with your build, for example, you can just do Iron Bear spam where you get in and out, and in that case, Auto Bear would be quite helpful. And coming to our second largest tree is our red tree. We are starting off with Armored Infantry to get down to Drowning in Brass. This is very good gun damage. The fire rate decrease doesn't really matter that much, but that gun damage really does. It plays into our damage formula quite well, and gun damage is definitely something that we want with this build. We then take 3 out of 3 in Thin Red Line because we are using a bloodletter. This goes up to 6 out of 3, which is definitely quite beneficial. You do want to make sure that you are getting under that 50% HP threshold. Anything below that doesn't matter as much, but we are going to be using URAD for this build, so Thin Red Line is quite important. Volcano Whoop-Ass is just a pretty good utility still. Again, we kind of just use Iron Bear as an oh shit button. Experimental Munitions, another pretty decent damage boost. Desperate Measures is very important. This is when getting more points into Thin Red Line can be much more beneficial, as we can get more gun damage out of it. Again, gun damage very important to Moze's formula, very important to this build. Behind the Iron Curtain isn't exactly necessary. You can put these 2 points anywhere else that you would prefer. I would recommend, if you don't want to do Behind the Iron Curtain, then maybe Vladoff Ingenuity. I just prefer Behind the Iron Curtain myself. And then finally, 5 out of 5 into Phalanx Doctrine. This is a kill stall that gives us max shield size and gun damage per stack. This stacks infinitely and is incredible. As I said, there's a lot of gun damage in this tree. We want a lot of gun damage. It helps our damage formula incredibly well. And the more gun damage we have, the more we get out of big surplus and Fire in the Stag Den, meaning our one-shots hit even harder. Now, the only 2 other things I want to specifically note is that we don't take force feedback, as force feedback really isn't that amazing of a skill. I just really didn't feel any sort of difference whenever I took it versus when I didn't. And I'm also not taking Tenacious Defense, as you can use an Ass Break Shield so that every time you get in and out of Iron Bear, this does proc. That is an option for this build if you would prefer. I don't do that though. I just don't find it as fun, so I don't take Tenacious Defense, as it just doesn't really proc often enough for me to warrant it. And then to our final tree, our green tree. Cloud of Lead, of course, more incendiary damage, less ammo consumption. And we take 3 out of 3 and Stoke the Embers, 1 into Redistribution, 1 into Scrappy. Stoke the Embers is good, better incendiary damage. Redistribution isn't as important, but it can be pretty nice because we do have to reload our weapons. This will allow us to have slightly less downtime. And then 1 point into Scrappy, mostly just to get down, and because it's weapon damage, and there's not really a better place to put this. We then pick up Russian Offensive for the lifesteal, and so that we can run and gun, which can be quite helpful, and Scorching RPMs, as this gives us fire rate, which is very nice for Jakobs, and critical hit damage, which is incredibly beneficial to this build. Now onto our actual gear. Weapons don't have to be anything too specific, however I would highly recommend the Headsplosion, as the Headsplosion has a lot of really good synergy with Moze, being splash damage and also ricocheting 3 more projectiles every single time you get a crit. The Moonfire and the Unforgiven, both of these act pretty similarly. I do think the Moonfire tends to win out in a majority of situations, however. Both are very good options. The Maggie and the Snowmash are also quite nice, as Moze benefits from the multiple pellets with short fuse, and the Critical Thug can be very, very fun for just wiping an entire area of enemies should you feel like it. I do then hold on to a couple different rocket launchers as this is necessary for a lot of bossing. There are some bosses you can take on pretty easily with just the normal gear that we use. However, for some of the tougher ones, kick chargers and plague bearers are going to be needed. And generally for our rocket launchers, we want after exiting Iron Bear gain 160% increased splash damage, as it's just going to give us the best single shot damage. However, you can also still use URAD, which speaking of URAD, again, that is what we use on all of our gear. This lets us set up very good radiation chains. This gives us huge AoE and it prevents us from being overwhelmed. While I was doing testing and doing different variants and such, the biggest thing I kept running into was being overwhelmed by packs of enemies. I just didn't have the DPS to actually deal with that and the sustain to deal with it either. The second I switched to URAD, that drastically changed, as these radiation explosions happen pretty much every single time you hit a crit and kill something, meaning that if there is a group of enemies, one shot is going to kill all of them, completely negating any possibility of being overwhelmed, especially when you have a Atom Balm. Personally, I really like the Atom Balm Victory Rush. This makes your radiation explosions even more potent, giving them higher damage and higher radius. The Victory Rush is quite nice as it gives us more movement speed and more damage. However, if you would prefer to be a little more tanky, you can also use a Atom Balm Deathless, although this is not necessary. I would only super recommend a Deathless instead if you're using a bloodletter that doesn't quite get you down to that 1 HP. As for some other relic options, we also have the Company Man, very good if you want Torg or Jakobs, depending on which one you're using more of. You can also pick up a Pearl, although I wouldn't necessarily recommend the Pearl, as while it does work fine, it's not as good as any of these three options, since the Company Man can also boost your critical hit damage. And of course, we also have a Toboggan, just specifically for bossing. Slide, get that damage boost, do even more damage. And then finally, our shield, we use an Infernal Wish. However, you can also use a Ass Break Revolter. The Revolter can be very good for some bosses that have a big shield. Generally, though, you will stick with the Infernal Wish. The Infernal Wish adds a projectile to every single thing that we shoot, so this is incredibly good for our Headsplosion, our Unforgiven, any sort of thing like that. If you are using a shotgun or a masher of some sort, instead you will want to use a one-shot or shield for the big amp damage, or as I said, an Ass Break Revolter with Iron Bear spam. And then for our grenade, you just want a Cloning Maddening Tracker with On Grenade Throw. I unfortunately have not re-rolled this Cloning Maddening Tracker yet to have On Grenade Throw, but I will definitely get around to doing that. But of course, the Cloning Maddening Tracker is just the best grenade for survivability on Moze, as it hits so many times and it just refills your health bar right back up. But yeah, that's about everything to go over with this build. If you would like to download it, there's a link down in the description to my Discord where you can directly download all of my build save files. And while you're down there, maybe check out my Twitch. I will be live after this playing through some content with this build. But with that being said, I hope you guys enjoyed. If you did, please consider leaving a like, comment, subscribe, all that, and I will see you guys in the next one.